Depression, boredom, and loneliness feed and are fed by social media platforms. Beyond fake news, our platform dependencies, miseries, and anxieties are all too real. Many feel sadness about our collective inability to change, yet cannot imagine deleting social media accounts out of fear of isolation. Platform blues are an area of interest for multiple and varied forms of research. Critical inquiry into techno-feudalism, memes, online dating, doom scrolling, right-wing libertarian/conspiracy cultures, and girl theory. Alternative ways of organising community provide glimpses of hope, as seen in protest and solidarity movements, such as those addressing climate action, to Me Too, to Gaza. Platform blues in Australia exist, but neither strict regulation nor the melancholic dream of going offline will solve it. How can our phones become a tool of connection again? Resisting the distractions of AI eye candy, Platform Blues addresses the reality of our tech-induced mental poverty. The episode you're about to listen to was presented as part of the Platform Blues, The Sad States of Social Media Symposium, a collaboration between the Centre for Creative and Cultural Research, the Centre for Deliberative Democracy and Global Governance, and the News and Media Research Centre, all at the University of Canberra, and the Institute of Network Cultures at the University of Amsterdam. This symposium was curated by Geert Lovink, Institute of Network Cultures, Amsterdam, and Denise Thwaites, University of Canberra.
So I'm delighted to be able to introduce the final session for today for Platform Blues, which is I've Got a Right to Sing the Blues. You know, we'll all think, I personally don't have a right to sing the blues, but one does theoretically. So our first presenter on this one is Melinda Rackham, who is an adjunct research professor at the University of South Australia Creative in Adelaide, and she wove tales of intimacy and identity in networked and virtual worlds when the net was young. Founder of Empire, an online platform for other voices in media arts, their practice has expanded to curate, direct, mentor, and produce. Melinda's latest book, Countess, Spoiling Illusions Since 2008, co-authored with Elvis Richardson, probes the persistence of gender asymmetry in Australia's art world. Love all of that. Thank you so much, Melinda.
Woohoo. Okay. Yes, I've been working on the internet for quite a while. This was the original Empire logo for Empire. So I did say I didn't care about the legacy of Empire, which was the global media arts list I founded in 2002 as part of my PhD on virtual reality spaces in the internet, which I called soft spaces. So I wanted to expand this idea of us interacting on the web into us interacting virtually as well. So as well as coding a virtual reality world, I started to run this listserv. And listservs were popular at the time. I don't know. What's the audience age here? Does anyone remember? Yeah, it remembers. Yay, thank you. Woohoo. Yo, woohoo. Okay. The listserv was run on the popular open source Mailman platform, and that was developed in the early 90s as sort of a single topic fan-based platform. And the site was maintained by Nigel Kirsten on a server at the School of Art and Design at the University of New South Wales. That's basically how it started. I'd been on mailing lists around the place, been on NetTime and a few others, and this mailing list started with a different idea, which I stole from Jordan Crandall, which was curating monthly dialogues so that guests are invited each month to talk on a specific topic. It's this idea that one voice didn't dominate, that there wouldn't be flame wars, there'd be discussion, that there'd be space for really diverse voices because you could ask a really different group of people to present. And it proved to be really popular. I thought it would be a cosy group of about maybe 50 people, and then it started to grow rapidly. I think it only hit around 2,000 to 3,000 people, but I'm not sure what it is now because we've lost access to the server. I hosted, and this was the original logo, and it was made in more retro talk, Shockwave Flash. So all of these little lines sort of went and all the nodes started to interact with each other differently. And now it's silent, just like Empire. Anyway, I envisaged it as doesn't really matter if you can't read that, you're getting the idea. That's the front end that I hosted on my domain Subtlenet. So I envisaged it as a sort of utopic commons that was accessible and inclusive, as I said, with underrepresented voices, especially from the global south, because debates on the internet or discussions on the internet at that time were held in the Northern Hemisphere. And Australia didn't figure except for like a few people like VNS Matrix, who are iconic, of course, who sort of broke through that Northern Hemisphere banner. So it started to become very popular, and I couldn't manage it by myself. So I asked video blogger, the late Adrian Miles, who some of you may remember from Fibre Culture, as well, and Melbourne Games producer Rebecca Cannon to come on and help moderate with me. And then other people, as the list grew, its energy sort of grew, and others just volunteered to join, like Christina McPhee and Michael Arnold Majors from the States, Jim Andrews, who's a poet from Canada, Tracy Benson, who was in Canberra for quite a while. So I became director of the Australian Network for Art and Technology in 2005, and I couldn't maintain that job and this list at the same time, so I handed it over to other people, but still kept the back end for quite a while. And facilitators Renata Ferro and Tim Murray from the US joined, as well as many others from the UK, Argentina, Brazil, Turkey, United Arab Emirates, Germany. So there was a plethora of voices all over the place. After I left ANAT, and in around 2010, I couldn't find an Australian university who were interested in hosting and supporting the list. So Renata and Tim, with my blessing, transitioned the front end to the Rose Goldson Archive of New Media Art at Cornell University Library, where they were both professors. So naively, I thought that the site was completely safe, archived for posterity, like a child that had grown up and I didn't have any responsibility for anymore. But, my naivety. The Cornell site should be there. Yeah, so you can see that it just sort of mirrors that, but with a little less information. All of these links are supposed to are clickable so that you could go straight into the topics that were there, that were discussed every month. So now, when you go to what should be a discussion, which was linked from here, you just get nothing. And speaking about losing data, I left my laptop in the apartment I was staying in this morning. So when Erin was talking about data loss, which I really needed to hear, I was in an Uber going backwards and forwards to get the laptop. So yeah, nothing. There it is, it's gone. So these archives that mirror the evolution of what used to be called new media art practices and new technologies have, have sort of been wiped. I thought the thing about the internet was everything was supposed to stay there forever, but they've been wiped by a cybersecurity thing at the University of New South Wales, and it's been almost 6 months, and they won't tell me what's happened. They will not. It's like the wall of silence, the iron gates have come down. But luckily for libraries, and I like that Matthew's working with libraries, good old Pandora at the National Library of Australia started archiving this when it started, so that if you look up Empire, you will get some list archives, which is just incredible. Thank you, librarians. Sorry, it's not just what? A jewellery company. It's not just a jewellery company or a game or in anything. When they started, there was the only Empire around, but now it's there's lots and lots of them. So, I was delighted to find that there are 160,000 results from the University of New South Wales, and they're snapshots, so snapshots over time, and I'm sure most of you know how archives work. So some of the links work, some don't. With these, the full archives are there, which is great. Not all of it, but full months are there, and they're searchable, so that's great. So here's one from a gamer discussion, so we can get there by thread. Yeah, but that's not there for every month, so that's a little bit unfortunate. And yeah, good on libraries. They're all about much better than educational institutions or universities, because they're all about accessibility and the public good. And there are some text archives at Cornell as well, but it's a little bit like unravelling a jumper and putting it all back together again with every same stitch in place. And do I necessarily want to do that? I'll just jump back to that Pandora page. So there's this discussion we did really quite early in 2005, in March, about archiving on the web, strangely enough. In fact, I can remember going to an archiving on the web conference in 1998. So, it's not a new thing. But, people from around the world were, and many librarians were actually involved in this. And it was a great discussion. And then I didn't ever think anything more about it until about 6 months later, this book appeared in my letterbox and in my mailbox. And I went, what is that? I didn't order anything, blah, blah, blah. I open it up, and it's actually the archive of Building the Archive, of the archive discussion from Empire in March 2005, and it was part of a gallery exhibition. And so every post, every little dot is just reproduced without editing in that. And so that's the weight and the form of a month's worth of digital discussion. So that archive that's gone missing is about 250 of these books, and that will make a big bonfire if you're burning books. And I must say, Peter Melanauskas from South Australia, who's just done the children on social media ban, South Australia is very forward-thinking. We've also, at my university, deleted all the books in our library, so we only have digital records now. Good on them. Books, so impermanent. But Empire, oh, speaking of books, hang on. Here's a book I just wrote on gender asymmetry in the visual arts, and on women's and non-binary difference experience in the arts. I've got some copies for sale. I was going to put them on the table, but everything else was free. So I thought people might grab them. But every university library needs one. And yes, and they're 70 for institutions and 50 for people, because institutions aren't people. And they're beautifully designed. I'll show you later. That's very bad, isn't it? But it's American, so we're all American now. Okay, but just getting back to that, Empire wasn't just a virtual discussion list. It was a hybrid creature with a presence of its own. It sort of spawned global events and hard space outputs. Its reach was more than a digital archive. It was academic papers, it was exhibitions in major museums. They're just some of the things that I pulled up recently. Was in a show in Acme in 2004, which I curated, so it was easy. There's one in, the NTT in a communication centre in Tokyo. It was included in Documenta 12, which is sort of, they're major things. But there were meetups, there were forums that ran online in companion with hard space physical events. But it was also, memories, objects, relationships and locations. So this archive is not really about pixels on a screen or words on a page. It's a spark that created other conversations or artworks or research or performances or texts or poetry. So now that the structural body is gone, and it could be reanimated by a magic line of code, I don't know. It's sort of like go back to the child metaphor, like your child is missing at sea. They could be alive, they may not. But what about, all those other untethered artefacts, traces that have lost their context? Does it matter? Should you let sleeping dogs lie, dead lists die? I do care, of course I do. After 20 years, I'm still tethered to it, no matter how hard I try to distance myself from it. But is it really my responsibility? I'm going to do a little break here for a vintage view of the list discussion by Marcus Westcamp, because I can. This was called Social Circles Visualisation, and to look at how list dynamics went. Super clunky. I'm amazed it even still works. What I've been thinking about, and this is intermission, what I've been thinking about while we've been talking today is, I used to go to conferences and everyone was tweeting during them. Every conference had a hashtag. Everyone was talking to people as it was happening live. I don't think that's happening anymore. And I've also been thinking about things like the wonderful project called Web 2.0 Suicide Machine, which, with just one entry, and that was from Worm in the Netherlands, with one entry you could take yourself off Facebook, take yourself off LinkedIn, take yourself off MySpace. Who remembers MySpace? Oh my God. And something else. Twitter, that's right, you could take yourself off Twitter. I think Facebook eventually sent them a cease and desist, and they had to stop, doing whatever they were doing. How are we going with the social circles? Oh, very slowly, yes. But just this idea that, every interaction makes a different action happen. Okay. So should I try to recreate this list or should it go? I do care, but I had relinquished guardianship and the curatorial direction of it many, many years ago. And this isn't the first time I've been asked to save the list when the universities changed service, forgot to tell us, the links became invalid. Where does my moral obligation end to the media arts community? Does it matter? I grew up working on the web and I've seen a lot of my work disappear through non-compatible coding and servers being wiped, format changes and discontinued platforms. I've updated and archived other works. Some's half functional, and I've actually started a process to get my early virtual reality modelling language work recoded so it can work again, and I'm a little bit excited about that. It's like, ooh, this is very old soft spaces coming back to life. But there's external forces at work as well. It's not just what I think or what the other moderators think. Empire keeps getting invitations to participate in this early web revival thing that's happening at the moment. Like Taiwanese American artist Shirley Chang's retrospective in Germany next year. She's chosen it as one of 6 web work, mailing list works to be part of her Composting the Net artwork. Is anyone familiar with that? A few nods. Yes. Which basically chewed up mailing list dialogue to make compost for new digital sprouts to disappear. And let's go to that. And I don't know how you'd feel if 25 years of net time disappeared off the list, off the planet. Okay. So this leads me to the question that I'd like you to answer in the spirit of deliberative democracy. And can we set up a polis conversation on this? So should it stay or should it go? What would you do if you were me? Stitch it back together or let it compost? And see what new fantastic things emerge. But it seems like, in this space where, I don't know, are there a lot of spaces now for this sort of dialogue? I guess they are. I guess they're different. How do they work? Do we need these anymore? I mean, what sort of conversations do you have in Discord? Is that different? I think it's different. So can everyone just give me a thumbs up to stay or a thumbs down? Oh no, the server's still there because you can bounce an admin message to it, but the archives have completely disappeared. And it's taken them 6 months to say, oh, we would have had a problem fix 3 months ago, but we don't now, and we'll have to look into it. And it's so complex. And I'm thinking, it's quite simple software, really. Oh, yeah. The frustration is that, once upon a time I would have known the dean and said, hey, I don't know the echelon of people working there now. I know some professors there who I've asked to speak to the Dean of Research, and a little bit happens every now and again, but they just do not respond to mails, phone calls, anything. It's like, door shut.
I guess I'm really interested in the way I think we are always talking about this in quite binary terms about it's, the archive is state or not. When there are those fragmentary traces of it in different places, and I totally hear you in the sense that like it's not your job to stitch them all together. Yeah. But has the archive just become a bit more distributed, right? Like it's less of a centralized thing, and it's distributed and it's fragmentary. But I guess from a heritage significance perspective, they often do when they identify something as significant, they will take what they consider to be kind of like those emblematic moments of it. And who decides what that is? Is the someone at the National Library thought that particular month was important. So I guess it's interesting
because to me, I feel as if it's still there in some respect, but it's not there through the way that you would have known it.
Well, is it accessible and do people know?
Yeah.
I mean, information's not there if it's not accessible.
Do you think that it being through the National Library is less accessible than it was?
Yeah, because you've got to know to search Empire, and then you've got to scroll through the perfumes, the games, the shops,
No.
to find it.
And I just wanted to ask a question about whether your sense of responsibility for it pertains to the fact that it's a collaborative work by many authors. Like, are you feeling a sense for the other authors? And I guess the other thing which would be interesting to hear from you, in a position I recently left, I was actually responsible in some cases for making decisions about people who wanted things taken out of the National Libraries.
Oh, okay.
And without going too much into it,
Yeah.
people who sometimes didn't reflect fondly on their younger selves' creative works, etc. And there was, of course, policy guidelines around this, which was basically the library does not make judgments. If something's published, it's published.
Yeah.
And so it was about it. But once again, there's that kind of issue of, people might have said, well, it's not just my work, there's other stuff there. I don't know the copyright, or I shouldn't have done it, that kind of stuff. So I guess I'm just really interested in that reverse thinking. Like, what is the responsibility of the other contributors, and should they have say in the maintain the stitched up body of work?
Yes, that's a very good question, and I could email thousands of people if I had that and ask them. And they can't get access to the database. But that's great to think about, because it is joint ownership, and it's a commons, and
I wanted to did you ever play Creatures, first game with artificial intelligence, or did you know anything about its online lore? Because it's very similar to what you were going through.
Oh, okay.
There's a really great video essay, I'll send it to you, but basically there was one player so Creatures was the first game that used AI, and it was like a little algorithm that you could basically machine train, and it was like pixelated, cute little norm, and you could either abuse it or reward it to train it. And so someone created a bunch of abuse norms, that you could then rehabilitate. And one of the things that then happened in the early 2000s is a bunch of us got really into rehabilitating them, and it created these online archives of variously abused norms. And you could then I went back a few years ago to try and see if I could find abused norms, and some were still there, and some were on various people's hard drives, but we had to do a kind of server call out on Discord to find. So yeah, I see it's got a kind of similar history that you might find in terms of responsibility, because I still have the slave lib, which is the first ever abused norm, and I kind of have a similar theme of am I the only person now who has this on a hard drive? So it's I think you'd enjoy it.
Okay, thank you. It's like a new input. Well, I didn't get a vote from everybody. I got some. Everyone for a yes.
I wanted to say no then. I
wanted to say no, but I feel like it's better thing to say.
It's morality. Yeah.
But also, just think of all the carbon you'll be saving by endlessly archiving it. And
text.
environmental impact of remembering it.
Yeah, text files are so big. Yeah.
In the light of your book, in the light of women getting written out of history, all of that must, don't you think that's playing a role in your contradictory feelings towards letting it go?
A little bit. But there's also the mother thing. It's this is my spawn. But yeah, exactly. It's like, oh, not important enough to archive. Have I been a bad mother? Am I, being such a puddle duck? Did I leave the eggs in the wrong place? Those sorts of ideas. How I'm not, confirmed at sleep.
But did the dad even show up? Like, where is the dad in this picture? I remember having exactly this conversation with Elvis Richardson,
Okay.
who just worked with about Countess, and
Yes.
that's why a long time ago about. That's why she also wanted to produce a book.
Yeah.
So it's very funny that your next project is this kind of backwards version.
Yes,
It's the same
doing that.
concept.
So that was, yeah.
I want to say something because I had the same situation. I created a journal of peer production in 2011.
Yeah.
And it was like a do-it-yourself peer-reviewed journal with, everything, all the decisions were made on a list, exactly like that one, but it's archived somewhere. They set it up on, I think, a free software server, so it's still there. But at one point, it was the Foundation for Peer-to-Peer Alternatives that was renewing the domain or something, and it lapsed. And so now we've folded it because, I started doing the digital commons thing. And now I don't feel a sense of responsibility. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. There's like 15 issues. Some issues have 20 articles. There's art stuff on it. It's very rich.
Yeah.
And this guy in Holland runs it. I don't even know him. He's got the server. I don't even know who I've never met him. But I don't feel a sense of responsibility because it's done. It happened. Yeah. If it survives, it survives. But at the end of the day, why does it have to be me that, carries on? So that's why I wanted to vote no, but I thought it was terrible to vote no.
Yeah.
It's like having children. I wanted to
Biological. So I did want to ask you here, if net time completely disappeared, what would you think or feel?
No, I wouldn't be concerned for a second because we know that so many people have personal archives.
Okay.
And so that I know is the case with Empire too. You haven't spoken about it, but there's so many people who maybe even have complete archives on their hard drives of this list.
What do you think?
Oh, absolutely.
He's
And so I'm one of them, but yeah. Sorry, but at the time, rightly so, we believed, in decentralized, in multiple, archives, and but the thing is, you can't track them down, and so then there's this element of kind of, historical serendipity.
Yeah.
So you have the certainty that there are multiple copies, which is a good thing. The problem is you don't know exactly where they are. And that's the situation you are in right now.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I wouldn't be concerned for a moment. Also, maybe even think of your own computer. I don't want to, but maybe you deleted everything.
I delete all mail.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but not everybody is like this. So, and also because these archives these days, they're so tiny. Somebody said, are they a gigabyte? I don't think they're a gigabyte. It's less.
It's tiny.
It's tiny.
Text.
Right? So
There's no images. There's no.
You can use QR codes in store. 1.6 megabytes. QR codes on the page.
Yeah.
Now,
Yes, thank you. Mindful of time. Thanks everyone for your input. I feel relieved. Now I can go home free. Ta.
I guess something to say as well, that on that note of fragmentary archive, that was the archive of that conversation, I'm afraid, is also going to be a little bit fragmentary because we weren't using the mic. So sorry, we'll have to use our imaginations to some degree or try and recall. Did anyone take notes? Anyone? But thank you so much, Linda. I thought you brought up so many interesting things, because I think for me at least it's that, should we care, but also can we help ourselves but care, right? I think that's the hard thing. That's a common thread through this day as well. So I'm going to introduce the person who needs no introduction, Geert Lovink, to come and talk to us about the big platform blues of, is it platform brutalism? I think that's it. Thank you, everyone, to welcome Geert Lovink to the stage.
All right. Thanks for staying. I'm not going to bother you too much because it's already so late. So, I was planning to go into two parts of my work, namely the platform and the blues, right? And so these are two distinct things, and I'm just going to read a few paragraphs of both and maybe contextualize them a little bit. So thanks to Denise and many more people, I'm here on a residency at the University of Canberra, and I'm working on the next book that will be out in 25, but one of the chapters and one of the key concepts there is this shift to what I call platform brutalism. And Aaron has mentioned it before. I was very happy with that, because obviously this this book is important for me, namely Brutalism by Achille Mbembe, which he wrote in French back in 2020 and came out last year, or this year in English. So I'm going to read a little bit about this this question of you know, what is platform brutalism. So it's kind of an adoption. The term itself is not in the book. So what I've done, I've just adopted Mbembe's you know, general term and description of what brutalism is today to the platform. However, I have to say here that he, in this book, sometimes also refers to the digital, to the internet, and even to platforms. So he is writing about it, but maybe, you know, I'm just let's say adopting it to my context, namely that of media theory in internet criticism today. So, known as the 1950s rough concrete architecture style, Mbembe presents the concepts of brutalism as a thought image that can be seen as a not so elegant synonym for the economic laws associated with the term capitalism, in which the emphasis shifts from profit and value maybe to violence. And this turn is, you know, very, very important here, which we will see in many contexts happening around us, from economy to violence. Mbembe explains, I quote, "Brutalism is the name given to this gigantic process of eviction and evacuation, as well as to the draining of vessels and emptying of organic substances." End of quote. This results in a naturalizing social war, a development many see unfolding since COVID and the wars in Ukraine and Gaza. So what I want to do here is map, you know, the context that we worked in here today. namely the one from, from Zoom fatigue and the use of memes and copium to the weaponizing of social media today. And I see this really as maybe a gradual, but also as a shift that goes through shocks, in the Naomi Klein way, as the way she describes it. But then, these are kind of shocks that maybe we're living in them, through them, but yeah, it will take some time to reflect on this shift, this brutal shift. Once we're stuck on the platform long enough, will the mood inevitably turn violent? And this is the question that I'm posing myself now in 2024. And this is the question also of this ongoing, very long-term regression. And it's a fundamental question. Can stagnation and regression go on forever? And I think we all inevitably know the answer. It will not go on forever. However, we have no idea where we are, right? So we know there is a finality, but where are we in the process? We have no idea. Maybe we're even at the beginning of it. We have no sense of this, right? So there is a finality, but yeah. So that's the uncertainty in this process. Is it enough to look at the role of Elon Musk, the owner of X, soon becoming a key part, a key role player, in the Trump 2 administration, overseeing the expulsion of many millions of undocumented workers from the US? And so this is where, this will be, I think in 25, a really very, important moment when this violent move will be paired with, how should we call it? State government propaganda on X, right? This is inevitable. This is inevitable. He can say whatever he wants about freedom of speech, but this will materialize in a very different way. He is not able to anticipate, because he and them, they are in unleashing dynamics at the moment. And it's exactly these dynamics that I want to address here. And this is what I see as a violent turn, at least. That's the term that I'm using for it now. And of course, we're not even mentioning here their, military support they will give to Putin in the case of Ukraine. And of course, their ongoing support for Netanyahu's war in the Middle East, and the ethnic cleansing and erasure of Gaza and its population in particular. Right, so this is kind of where I see a platform theory today. However, we are still kind of stuck in the living in, and that was what we've seen today here, we're still living with billions of people in the platform blues of today, right? So this is kind of a problematic situation. The situation continues. However, we also see that it's changing rapidly. Now, and these two things, they don't go together, right? Do they? Yes, they do, because this is what we experienced already in 23 and 24, right? And so, and it was described today here very well. And why is that? So now I'm going to go a little bit into the question of why these platforms are creating this unbearable smoothness that we swipe through. So platforms are the unseen. They were designed to look straight through them and not notice them anymore, right? So we do not notice platforms, thanks to their mundane functionality. Transparency makes it hard to see them and experience them as distinct objects. They do not shine, to put it in the word of the late Dutch architecture theorist Maurice Nio, right? So they're not shining objects. They're kind of objects, but yeah, we can't even identify them as such. Swiping the screen, the user stumbles on a persuasive meme. Oh, the cares of man, how much of everything is futile. I am bored and lost direction in life. Or am I just optimizing the lost time? As Art Beer stated, each fashioned thing speaks of its change. But what happens when change stalled and flipped into regression? On the menu today, dogpiling, flaming, and doxing as entries, a rug pull, a bank app scam, and a ransomware attack as mains, and a classic virus as dessert, right? So this is kind of what people experience today. We do not notice the yelling, yet opaque surfaces anymore, until they literally break down and the accident hits us straight in the face. The purpose of the platform is to do what it does, right? And it's completely opaque, kind of almost empty description. There's no higher goal or problem that needs to be resolved. Once you've created a profile, you click on anything and you're in. From the moment you've signed up, the platform presents itself as a self-evident totality, a surface that was, is, and will always be, ready to lure you into interactions and transactions. Now that you're part of the flow, any attention hook can pull you away. There's no longer the tiring obligation to build one's social network, which I think TikTok proves, and people are still surprised. Young people not so much, but yeah, they're really surprised about TikTok, that you don't have to build up anything, right? You're in and they go, right? It's a flow. There's no need to build up this social credit or anything, or like friends, or all this kind of tiring long-term investments that people in the past needed to do to build up networks. So you just click and go and are in. You're part of the flow. So welcome to Monad World, the self-contained inward-looking monad and the ever-expanding sense of world-making that are no longer a contradiction, right? So it's the monad is looking inside, but once you're inside, you have the feeling that you're in an endless universe, right? And so that gives you the comfort. It's kind of this, self-inward-looking experience that is so satisfying. So, but at some point, of course, the warnings start to show up. Whenever you think something is too good to be true, it usually always is, right? And this is where the kind of the flip starts to happen. This is where the blues sets in, where this whole, what I call the rainbow of mental states starts to appear, right? For the one, it will experience, it will show up as a burnout, a depression, systemic loneliness, anger, rage, depression, you name it, right? So, and this is the side that I have in my work over the last five or more years, I have been focusing on, and yeah, that's not always always nice. So you feel down and out because you were fooled by the catfish scammer last night. There's no way my beloved Lucia is fake. She sent me a real picture of herself. Remember that one? For instance, issue fatigue feels real, right? Skipping a news avoidance. I really want to, myself dig more into that term. It's very, very good and precise. No more suicide drone videos, please. Information avoidance is a nasty issue that most elegantly try to ignore. But we're actually already doing it. So the habits are no longer created over time. They were there before we knew it. And there are tracking predators in digital spaces, but it cannot possibly been you. We need to face this. The Brad summer has passed, but it wasn't about you anyway. The moment of messy, imperfect self-acceptance passed without notice. Instead of the fun, easy experience advertised on swiping platforms. Trina Orchard discovered in her book on online dating endless upkeep. She notices ghosting, fleeting moments of sexual connection, and a steady flow of misogyny. This is what she found on these dating websites. Fragile, complex systems need constant maintenance, and this is an issue, right? Of the platforms, because they will immediately fall apart if you're no longer interacting, contributing, and this is something that many people experience. Once you're out and you return, let's say 3 months later, you have no idea. You look like, oh, was this me? Is this really what concerned me? So there's that moment of instant alienation. There's a double bind at work here. The platform user is unable to leave the paradoxical situation. It is not possible to address the inner conflict without facing possible negative consequences, such as social isolation and reputation loss. And so this is kind of where we're really stuck. Yeah, so I want to, as an end here, I want to just read a few more paragraphs, and then we close the event. Okay. So I want to dive into the social media wariness, the cause of our tired eyes. What are the techniques of resignation that we are exposed to? The blissful ignorance after browsing an entire ecosystem of narratives is not surprising. Culture is a pendulum, and the pendulum is swaying. The organized optimism, hard-coded in online advertisements and other forms of algorithmic advice, turned out to be merely producing anxiety. As Caroline Coles Richards stated, what can't be cured must be endured. The suffering, sorrow, and misery is getting tagged and filtered by our own self-censorship. We've been captured and feel frozen. What we receive is the online anger and anxiety of the online other. The growing imbalance in the distribution of digital enchantment is neither causing a revolution or revolt, nor does it fade out. We admitted we were powerless, that our lives had become unmanageable. This confession, this is step 1 in AA's 12 steps. And this is also where I see the start of my work. Right? We admitted we were powerless, that our lives had become unmanageable. As you and I are not able to resolve platform dependency, we remain glued to the same old channels, furious at others about our own inability to change. In my chronicles, we are staying with the trouble called internet, diagnosing our current phase of stagnation, while also asking how to get unstuck and de-platform the platforms. What happens to the psychosocial condition when there's nowhere to go and users are trapped in too big to fail IT firms? It's not pretty. While some believe that our persistent resentment, complaints, and anger are merely part of the human condition, totally unrelated to the shape and size of the information ecology, others, like me, are convinced that we have to take the mental poverty of the online billions very serious. We can no longer ignore the depression, anger, despair, pretending that they will be gone overnight after installing another app. Addiction is real, buried deep inside the body. Habits need to be unlearned. Awareness needs to be spread. All the while, Godot just sits there staring at the screen, waiting in the lobby for some policy change to be announced. Yet, nothing happens. The resulting fallback and fatalism comes as no surprise. What do you do when the world starts to fall apart? Anat Singh rightly asks at the very beginning of her book, The Mushroom at the End of the World. It seems we have our answer. We stick to the platform. Once we're locked in, the path to infinity has been blocked. Instead, we're caught in a Truman Show-like repetition of the perpetual now, toiling around in the micro mess of online others that try to do their best, masking their failures and despair like everyone else. The Italian theorist Franco Berardi observes the mental state of today's students. I quote, "I see them from my window, lonely, watching the screens of their smartphones, nervously rushing to classes, sadly going back to the expensive rooms that their family are renting for them. I feel their gloom. I feel the aggressiveness latent in their depression." In the social media era, the Oblomov position is not an option anymore. In particular for those that cannot economically afford to get stuck in the abyss. The design is elegantly forcing everyone to engage, make choices, click, agree, and respond. If only we were capable of taking action and making decisions. We experience the sadness of online existentialism minus the absurdity. We, the streaming egos, scroll and swipe, obsessed with self-creation. Facebook, the sociological constant of our times, equals the unbearable lightness of nothing. Surrounded by this massive bubble of light matter, we literally see no alternative options. Jailed in the digital monad, you are free to dream about as many worlds as you like. Being unsocial, the Zen status of detachment, is an ontological impossibility. We are never really lurking. Our presence is always noted, and we can therefore never truly enjoy the secretive voyeur status. Interaction is our tragic existence. Instead, we're constantly asked to upgrade, fill in forms, and rank our taxi drivers. Okay, I'll leave it here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gert. And I'm so glad we were able to enjoy the slideshow. We guys get through it all. Now, I think one thing, I know it's been a very long and interesting day. Well, something we were interested in being able to maybe do in this, a few minutes remaining that people might have the energy to think about is, indeed, I imagine some people might have questions. I know, Linda, if you want to come up as well. But also just thinking about, I guess, today, what's the purpose of coming together in this way, and what it might sort of bring forth. I guess for some of you who were here at the beginning of the day, thank you, it's been a long one, we started with that idea of the howl, and whether a howl can be, it's an expression of grief and dismay, but it can also be something productive. And something that's come out a little bit that throughout the day is this idea of, birthing something different and something that can come. So who here, for example, has ever witnessed birth, given birth? Anyone here? Yep. Yeah. There's a lot of howling in that, right? There's a deep guttural thing that is about trying to transition from one place to another, right? So is this what we're doing here today? Do we need to, and this is a question for Gert and Melinda, again thinking about letting go and all those different things, how do we get from this acknowledgement and this place of being able to feel that blues, but then transition into another place?
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, it's a question that people often ask me, does a proper understanding, first the study of sadness and all its other, mental states, blues, does that lead to action, right? And I always counter that question with the fact, do you believe that we can have action just through ignoring the real existing pain and states people are in, right? This is completely counterintuitive to anything that both Marxism and psychoanalysis have taught us, right? So would us ignoring the situation people find themselves in, lead to action? And yeah, so this is kind of the question that is out there, because as an activist, I need the optimism, the desire, the feeling that organization and excitement that I feel also here of coming together in real space here in Canberra. It's very, very important, right? Because without that drive, nothing happens. However, can we just supersede? Can we just ignore the situation we're in?
It's an interesting metaphor for me, because the birth I have given birth to was a cesarean and I was under anaesthetic. So my howl was like in grief and sadness for many years later for losing that child. And I guess what I've been thinking about a lot lately is the importance of grief, the importance of crying, the importance of, that honesty and, just acknowledging what is before anything else is possible. And
this is the situation of the platform blues, let's say.
What I do think is, when I was thinking before and I mentioned MySpace, it's like the platforms will change. They will disappear, but they will become more pernicious, really, in a way, as...
Yeah, well, so let's say the psychoanalytic reading of this is that it will not exactly disappear, but that the platforms will, like Google strong and Microsoft strong intention is, they will disappear in the background and become invisible infrastructure, right? And this is why we have many of our colleagues, many dear friends of mine, who have kind of turned from studying the platforms and the internet in the narrow sense to the infrastructure, right? But that is an even more tragic, line, even more, because then you really retreat and study very, very material but invisible infrastructure that, at least we can still discuss the platforms. People can still mention, at least the apps that they are on, right? This is no longer the case when it turns into invisible architecture.
Yeah, as if they're blood. I was just thinking about many of the people I know who were very early researchers, theorists, very active in the early internet days, full of hope for, the commons, have become writers of children's stories, painters, just anything that's completely offline, just to get away from it, because, they've burnt out from it. And I guess there's a younger, smarter generation coming through, hopefully, coming through that can see maybe a different perspective or a way around that. I think it's a little bit like, can we live without our mobile phones anymore? We probably can't. Can we live without a banking system? I mean, it becomes invisible.
It has become an identifier, right? Without it, you can't even shop. You can't order a coffee.
You're facially recognised when you go to Coles to do shopping. So they know if you walked out with a packet of almonds that you didn't purchase, so that we're surveilled in so many ways, including our digital activities. That it already is invisible.
Yeah, and so there's a real danger that we resonate in that sense because of this way it retreats into the invisible realm.
So, sorry, can I just want to recount an anecdote. I was doing my PhD on zines, underground magazines in San Francisco in the early 90s, and I interviewed this young woman who, you know, she was quite exotic to me. She had tattoos and everything, and bike messenger, you know, in those days tattoos weren't as common. She said something along the lines of, you know, we live under oppression, we live under capitalism. You just got to forget about, just keep doing what you're doing, do what you can. And I think that's the message, you know, you just got to keep doing it. On that note, Denise and I are part of the DCPC, Digital Commons Policy Council. We're organising an event in Liverpool next year where we want to focus on the Global South and Indigenous perspectives on the Commons. So if anybody in this room has any clues of people who could be part of that conversation, please get in touch, because I really we want to hear from you. So thanks very much. Sorry, I just thought to use this opportunity.
Yes. Very, very clever. David, you have a question too.
It may be a comment. But no, it's probably a question. So yeah, I was just thinking about those platforms becoming invisible. And I guess I was sort of thinking about WeChat in China, which seems to me like the kind of real example of where a platform has become society, right? And that now is exporting, right? In the sense that, you know, platforms are becoming and societies are becoming totalitarian through the sort of platform blues kind of export, in a sense, and, you know, Douyin, TikTok, blah, blah, blah. And I guess kind of this then kind of, I guess, is a little response to what Mathieu said, which was kind of keep calm and carry on, which I'm sort of feeling, you know, let's go full doom here. We've fucked things to the point where they're starting to feel, you know, like they're not unfuckable. You know what I mean? Like I'm not sure whether I had too many double negatives there, but yeah. But did you get what I was saying? Like, I'm not sure. I'm not. Like we're fucked. Like we're fucked it. Is my worry, and like, you know, and we're operating on time scales now where, you know, climate change, there's no going back, right? Like, you know, so I don't know.
Yeah, but we're also here in a teaching.
Am I wrong?
We're also here in a teaching and a research environment, and you know, we're also we have an obligation there, right? And so you can say, forget about it. And to some extent, this is exactly what I see happening. But on the other hand, there's so many urgencies and repeating crises, or permanent ones even, that we might want to forget about it. But then they come back. They return to us through the back door, in the form of urgencies and crises and things that we do not even have an idea about yet, because we don't know which ones will be on the plate in the year 2025, for instance. No idea.
And I think you had a quote from The Mushroom at the End of the Universe, which is one of my favourite books, and I don't know if people are familiar with it. Yeah, there's a few nods. But yeah, there are these mushrooms that only grow in degraded thank you, areas, and they're totally prized, and there's whole communities that are formed around them, and there are others that deal with nuclear waste. It's just like stuff that we didn't know, and who knows what will fall out of the sky next. I'm a dystopian by nature. I'm a pessimist. I think, we have tipped over the climate change tipping point. The planet will wipe us out, start a new thing, but we've got to live until that happens. That's the other thing. Do we want to just twiddle our toes and go to the casino, or actually try and make the world a place where there's more, more present, enjoyable, connected living. Informed living, maybe that's the word.
On the vibe of enjoyable living, and back to howling, I'm going to make that come together. Katrina, you mentioned catharsis and the humour in the work that you were doing, and the humour that's been in both, kind of despite your talk there, Kiet, behind you as well, sort of offsetting the tone of what you're saying. My question is about research communication and our role as people who already understand how fucked it all is, and trying to work quite a way. So a lot of the discussion and a lot of the research that's happening focuses on changes with the user and the user's responsibilities and what they can do to be more critically informed, etc., which is all important and valuable stuff. Can we flip that around in terms of thinking about the ways in which there might, so agency with people, like as you were saying, we can't afford to ignore the people who are going through this but are not in our context of being able to sit back, have shared jokes about it, and also be doing work that makes us feel like we're doing something. And we are, But so I guess my point there is, how do we take the conversations that we get to have together and the work that we sort of make in our respective practices? I'm just thinking about the kids in the classroom who are learning how to read things differently or think differently. How can we think about just conveying also, your blues are real, that's because you've become an economic set of eyeballs. Like it's not, I guess the idea of allowing that basic acknowledgement that the reasons for it happening, not just kind of how do we make the users more informed, but how do we also acknowledge that experience as researchers who are doing this work?
Yeah, for me, the outcome of this, day is a very positive one, namely that we are here with people from different backgrounds, and that we are not retreating into one micro discipline. That the arts, for instance, is an integral part and a vital, contribution to a deeper and more radical and effective understanding of the condition that we find ourselves in. In the same way, maybe also in that, in the near future, we could also just think of having more direct dialogues with policy. And definitely this is happening in Europe, because many people feel that the whole regulatory regime that maybe in the US will be unraveled, but that we will see taking place and taking much more space also, and so. So and so I hope that the dialogues here, the interdisciplinary dialogues here, will also come to a point where I wouldn't necessarily say that there will be a kind of a platform protest movement, but things will become so urgent that that people will act. And I agree that maybe it will not just be a ban of social media for the under 16. I think we can come up with something that is probably better. And in my center, the Institute of Network Cultures, we've always combined a radical critique with speculative and artistic work on alternatives, right? And so I really hope also that the conversation of today will go in that direction, because it's really when we do both that we can make a difference. And maybe we should just leave it here.
I was going to say, we are at time, so I don't want to cut you off. Linda, do you have something to respond as well to the...
Oh, I was just going to say that in Australia, the arts are sometimes very, not elitist, but not integrated into society in the same way they are in Europe. And I think that the way we communicate with, say, artistic workshops for kids that combine that sort of literacy is a great way forward. I think it's about communicating the ideas in ways that are accessible. You know, I know the whole university system is premised on you have this in this journal and that's great, but actually that doesn't change the world very directly. So the idea that, actually my taxi driver today when I forgot my laptop was from Bhutan, and we were talking about the gross national, of happiness, and it's like, they're the outcomes that we need. I think we need to work to, which don't actually fit all institutional requirements, but I guess the smartness and creativity in that is working out how to do them within those spaces.
From platform blues to gross national happiness. I think that's a trajectory that we're probably keen to map. Yes. So thank you so much.
Let's leave it there at this note. Thank you very much.